Welcome, and thank you for tuning into our panel discussion today. I am Reverend Mark Sandlin and serve as President and Co Executive Director of ProgressiveChristianity.org, who's bringing you this discussion today. My co executive director is my friend and colleague, the Reverend Dr. Caleb Lyons, who will be co moderating today. The broadcast is part two of our first of a semi regular series that we're calling Things That Matter. It's a show where we, not so surprisingly, discuss things that matter, particularly around issues of theology and justice. Today's topic is the spirituality of reproductive justice. We are joined by two panelists, Dr. Diana Butler Bass and the Reverend Dr. Jacqui Lewis, each of whom I will be introducing more thoroughly in just a moment. We will begin by asking each of our panelists to give their thoughts on the Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade, and then we'll have a Q&A segment moderated by Caleb, where we will ask our guests to respond to some of your questions. So just leave those in the comment section wherever you are viewing. Now, Caleb and I will do our best to stay out of the way today because, as Caleb pointed out last week, the last thing that we need is another conversation dominated by male voices. That said, let's now go to our panel for their initial responses on today's topic. Diana Butler Bass is an award-winning author, poet, popular speaker, inspiring preacher, and one of America's most trusted commentators on religion and contemporary spirituality. She holds doctorates from Duke University, where she's also taught. Her bylines include the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN.com, Atlantic.com, USA Today, Huffington Post, Spirituality and Health, Reader's Digest, Christian Century, and Sojourners. She has commented on religion, politics, and culture in the media widely, including CBS, CNN, PBS, NPR, CBC, Fox, SiriusXM, Time, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, and in multiple global news outlets. She's received multiple awards for her books, including several Books of the Year awards. And her most recent book is entitled Freeing Jesus, Rediscovering Jesus as Friend, Teacher, Savior, Lord, Way, and Presence. And I am also fortunate to call her my friend. Diana, we are so happy to have you with us today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Mark. I don't think I've actually seen you face to face or had a conversation with you since your installation when I got the honor of preaching the sermon for you.
It was amazing.
And,
you were absolutely wonderful, and I have missed seeing you since then for sure.
I've missed you too. Well, today's topic is, I mean, you can hear it in my voice. I rarely don't know what to say, but there's a level with this subject that I actually am really struggling with. And the struggle comes from several different directions. One is I think that abortion has always been a bit of a difficult topic for me personally to address. People ask me, what my opinions have been for years. And I would always say, well, I'm pro-choice, pro-life. Or right. I'm a classic sort of safe, legal, rare person, which are both kind of, I think, a little bit more old-fashioned views of the subject. When I talk to younger women, sometimes they don't kind of either share those views or understand the perspective that I bring to abortion. But to say those two things is simply to introduce this audience to the fact that I understand that abortion is a deeply complex subject in terms of Christian history, in terms of practice of the church, in terms of the emotional and psychological complexity of it, and also in terms of legal issues. And so when I would say that I was pro-choice, pro-life, the simplest way of explaining that is that I have always been deeply committed to the legality of abortion for women, and have said for years that I want to live in a country where women are considered full moral agents, where women have agency over their own lives in conversation with their communities, and out of their own moral and religious frameworks. That's the country that I want to participate in. The country that sees women as responsible people who have a choice to be able to make moral decisions related to their lives. So that's why I was pro-choice, but then I'm also kind of pro-life, and that
Right.
is, I never, as a Christian person, I certainly never wanted to make anyone to make that decision lightly or unadvisedly, which I know that most women don't make that
Right.
decision lightly or unadvisedly. But I have been uncomfortable when people talk about abortion in terms of maybe birth control. I always saw it as more of a kind of the choice that sometimes needed to be made for a variety of reasons. And so I I once had to face this decision, and I chose not to have an abortion, and I was very that worked for me because
Right.
I had gotten some tests about my daughter Emma when I was pregnant that indicated that she might have issues, physical issues before she was born, and the tests were actually wrong. And so anyway, that was a decision that I had to make, and it was very hard, and it was a painful thing. So that's kind of that's a little bit of where my personal piece is here.
Yeah.
And I can remember several years ago when I was asked to be on CNN to talk about abortion as a Christian, and had a good discussion actually with somebody who was vigorously pro-life and who didn't even have the pro-choice piece attached to it. And afterwards, a friend of mine called me up and said, "You did a really great job, but there was one thing you needed to do." And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "You needed to smile." And I said, "But I was on CNN talking about abortion." That's what you wanted me to smile while I was talking about. So anyway, that's just kind of where my territory is. So how have I felt recently?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I'm still in a little bit of a shock, frankly. I heard last night on the news somebody just sort of offhandedly said, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And I sort of stopped, and I went, I felt like I was living inside of a universe that I didn't understand, and that they were lying to me on the television. And so I kind of am wondering how many people might be in that kind of place right now, is that it hasn't entirely sunk in what's going on. And we're hearing these stories. I live in Virginia, which is going to be contested territory, but still relatively safe because we have a Democratic legislature here by one vote. But you know, I think that a lot of people in other states are feeling the immediacy of it more than, say, maybe Jacqui and I are in New York and Virginia. But it is there, and what I do know is that this is not going to stop at a states' rights issue. It has been pressed so long and so hard, mostly by the religious right, and their goal is the full and complete repeal of not only Roe versus Wade, but the to make abortion inaccessible and illegal across the entire country in every circumstance. And so, even though Jacqui and I are in Virginia and New York, and might not have that sort of instant legal sort of framework in our face, um, what we know is coming is that this is not going to be there. There will be no safe places for women to have choice if the religious right continues on the path that they have been on for the last 50 years. And I see no reason that they will stop. So that's kind of where I am right now, feeling like, oh my gosh, did this really happen? Yes, it really happened. Yes, the religious right achieved a really significant goal that it had from 50 years worth of organizing, and they'll keep pushing. and there will be more coming down the road. And we have to be both understanding where we are now, accepting the reality as it exists at this moment, dealing with the fallout from this moment's decisions, and also planning for a very different kind of fight in the future.
Right. Thank you for that, Diana, for helping us kind of think through this. Particularly your thought on the fact that there's probably folks out there, much like you were feeling, who even now, as we hear that phrase "overturn of Roe v. Wade," it feels unreal. It almost doesn't feel like that could actually be a thing. It's not the world we're supposed to live in. I think that really definitely resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of other folks. And we'll come back to some of that in a minute. Next, though, I'd like to introduce the Rev Dr. Jacqui Lewis. She's a senior minister at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. She's been featured in many national publications and is a highly sought after preacher and activist on racial conciliation, LGBTQ plus equality, and economic justice. Dr. Lewis launched and hosted the MSNBC program Just Faith, featuring inclusive interreligious conversations about culture and current events through the lens of progressive faith and spirituality. She co-founded the Middle Project, a leadership training institute for progressive faith leaders and social justice activists. She's the author of several books, the most recent being Fierce Love, a bold path to ferocious courage and rule-breaking kindness that can help heal the world. Jacqui, we want to welcome you back. We appreciate you being here. And I want to say it is certainly a pleasure to have another person who was ordained in the PCUSA with us in the discussion today. So it's good to see you. And we'll turn this over to you.
I'm going to throw up a fist to Presbyterians.
Yeah.
Diana Butler Bass.
It's so good to see you,
Jacqui.
Jacqui.
See each other in podcast, girl. Can we get together and talk sometime? Whatever. People who are listening, I did this talk twice just so I could have a chance to talk to Diana. We couldn't all get our schedules together.
That's right.
So, here I am again. And we both have a long list of articles and appearances, including Diana being on my show, Just Faith. I will say that all of that stuff that we've done in the past doesn't prepare me, for my stomach ache that I'm experiencing right now around this Roe v. Wade moment. I scampered into this call because I was just on another one about how the final clinic in Mississippi is closing today. The Pink House is closing today in Jackson, Mississippi. I was in Jackson, Mississippi last year this time, Diana and friends doing a project for Lily on Black folk spirituality. And I will say, I mean, I love the way Diana laid out her territory, as she called it. When the SCOTUS brief leaked a couple of months ago, lots of us had our heads turned upside down then, and began, Hoover organizing, almost in a desperate way, that we knew that obviously the case was going to be overturned, but to sort of raise awareness to get America to be as outraged as we are. I'm a Christian clergy. I'm progressive, probably left of left, but I've never had an abortion. I used to say, Diana, that I was pro-life, and always meant I'm pro-life of the mother, I'm pro-life of the pregnant person, I'm pro-life for the children, and I'm pro-life for all the babies that have to rehearse how to hide from gun violence, right? I'm pro-life for all the ones that are hungry and don't have clean drinking water. But I stopped. People people didn't get my nuance, So I am pro-choice. I've never met a pregnant person who was flippant about getting an abortion. It could be that person exists, but I haven't met that person. I haven't met a person who thought of abortion as birth control. They thought of it as a something they had to do, Diana, is the way you said it. There's so many things now that people can do for birth control, including birth control, but also the Plan B pill and just things that folks can do when they know they're pregnant and they don't want to be pregnant. So I think by the time the pregnant human decides to have an abortion, there is some reason that they need that choice. And I'm a Christian, and you all are Christians, and some of us are Presbyterian Christians. But like, this is not a Christian nation. This is a pluralistic nation. This is a nation full of people who believe in Allah and believe in Buddha and believe in the Talmud or Tanakh. This is a multi-faith nation. This is a Christian progressive nation and a Christian conservative nation. And part of the beauty of our diversity is we think differently and feel differently. And hopefully in the, following in the way of Jesus, we have an open heart to each other's differences and are guided by love, right? Love God, love neighbor, love self, and everything else is commentary. So I'm heartbroken at the success that our, I'm going to call them Christian-ish colleagues have had in this regard. I'm angry with us, Diana, progressive people, that we weren't smart enough, clever enough, fearful enough, Caleb and Mark, sophisticated enough to know that we were in a battle for the soul of America. And we didn't get in it to win it. We didn't throw down. We didn't put down our silly, fickle, you don't use my language and you don't say the right thing and you're not really fully my people, to decide what our platform was, right? Safe way for children, daycare, paid leave, an earth that functions, right? No guns, no automatic weapons, schooling for everybody. So many things that we all agree on that we couldn't get it together. And instead, we went into our corners, not just denominational corners, but faith corners, and also just you're not quite my people corners. And here we are looking at an onslaught of which the Roe v. Wade is a sample of all of the rights. The Voting Rights Act, for God's sake, was gutted by this court. Yep. And we're not outraged.
Yeah.
We were not outraged when we couldn't pass laws to protect Black lives after so many murders. We're still not able to come to agreement around what is policing. What should it look like? You shouldn't run away from a police person, clearly, because you're going to die. But is 60 bullets the response to a traffic stop? And all of these things, my friends, are connected. And I'll just say, as a Black woman of a certain age, Diana and I are the same age.
We are.
Absolutely. Watching this is catastrophic. It is devastating. And even still, I think in the church, there's many of us who want to be like, but not that, right? Like, not that, right, Jacqui? Do you really want dead babies? And I get called out and cussed out and violated because I say I'm pro-choice. And I want to say, it's not my business. If Diana had decided that she needed to have an abortion, that was her business with her God and her husband and her pastor and her physician, her body, her choice, because she is a human with agency and a faith life, and that God speaks to all of us, right? So I am fully enraged, okay, and more upset than I was last week, because we're seeing it play out. A little girl in Ohio was 10 years old. And Ohio could decide that a baby who was raped and is pregnant has to have the baby.
Right.
Because the unborn embryo
Mm.
matters more than her life. That's obscene. So she's on the way to Indiana, looking for care. This is very hard. The people whose lives will be devastated because some of us decide what is moral. We get to decide what's moral. We get to decide what's moral for ourselves. But does the court get to decide? And it's the news now is telling us that those Supreme Justices were meeting and praying, Diana, with those folks, those other Christian-ish people.
I
Mhm.
know.
And so they have colluded, right, with a branch of a faith that is
Yep.
part of American faith. I
Yep.
say in cahoots with my historian friend. Like, how dare we? This same faith, that same Christian-ish faith that had me 3/5 a person, right? That same faith that had Diana and I not franchised to vote, right? It's not qualified, quite frankly, to be moral and highfalutin and tell the nation how to be ethical.
Well
Perhaps
said.
I'll stop there.
I was at a wedding this last week and talked quite extensively to the Episcopal priest who was the celebrant, and he really shocked me when we were just sort of having this general conversation about the state of things, and he popped into the conversation and literally said, America is going to have to get used to the fact that you're being that, and he was from Canada, that you're being run by a theocratic right-wing Catholic sect. And when he said that, I mean, I couldn't believe it because this guy is generally a fairly moderate sort of fellow. And that's really, I mean, he said, wow, that's not even something I would put on Twitter, and he just sort of came out with it. And I said, yeah, if you combine that, with the fact of I more easily criticize the Protestant religious right and fundamentalism. But these two groups, I mean, this is exactly what Jacqui's saying. These two groups of Christian people, I know, a Christian-ish is the word you've been using, have decided that their doctrinal and moral definitions are necessary for the well-being of America to succeed and survive. And when it comes to abortion, what their position is that it is murder, that that life begins at conception, that that embryos and fetuses are as fully human as a mother who has 30 years experience in the world, and that when you forbid abortion, you are actually forbidding murder. And so that is a very blanket sort of moral understanding, and they are convinced of this, and they're convinced of it theologically, they're convinced of it politically, they're convinced of it legally, they are convinced of it in every single way, shape, or form, that the moment a sperm and an egg meet and produce and start dividing into cells, that is life, and anything that stops that from happening is murder. And so I'm really glad to be on this call with Jacqui, because what's intriguing to me, I mean, if I can step out of my own story and my own outrage for a moment, what's really intriguing to me as a historian is that the other piece of this is, while they have this moral framework that this is murder, they also have a story, a historical and ethical story that they put around that.
Yes.
And what they equate themselves with is they say that the people who are trying to stop these murders, are the abolitionists of the 20th and 21st century. And that we, people like everyone here on this call, that we are the slaveholders, and that they are the ones who are fighting for life, and that no nation can exist half slave and half free. And so therefore, their position, because it is like anti-slavery of the 19th century, has to become the legal framework for the whole nation if the nation is to achieve its moral vision and its rightful place in the world. And when I combine all of those pieces, the idea that we're talking about people who are deeply convinced that the products of any meeting of sperm and egg is life, and that any ending of that is murder, and they equate that story of their protecting the products of sperm and egg with themselves as the heroes in an abolitionist freedom fighter tale.
Right.
That becomes
Yeah.
a mind-blowing set of intellectual, moral, spiritual circumstances that become incredibly difficult to argue with. So I want to hear you talk.
I'm so glad you said all of that, Diana. That is so important. And I've been in so many talks. I'm like, I don't know where this one was, but so many people that are in the progressive spaces have already done that. Like I would say, drop in the podcast, that political article that is so well written that really explains that this abortion thing is about Francis Schaeffer and others deciding, well, that they've watched the Catholics in the 70s post desegregation, and it's part of the Southern strategy to say, well, damn, we got to find a way to get our white people mad so we can live the America we want. That's code for all of that. That's Nixon. That's the Catholics. That's those same cohorts, right, Diana? Like that same conflation of Protestant outrage that you got to send your children to school with the darkies, and you cannot get tax credit to start that private school where your children can be nice and white, and you're furious and you collude with a bunch of same interest people, Catholics and Protestants and racists, and come up with the test balloons. What will work? Will school prayer work? Nope. Will pornography work? Nope. Because I got some under my bed. Nope. So what's going to work? Abortion is going to work.
Right.
And at that moment in time, you all know this. I'm just saying it like y'all look up the thing. Go to Politico and do history of abortion outrage. The testing of what will work. And when the Southern Baptists aren't even they're like, what? Abortion? Who cares? Have an abortion if you need one. This whole story, Diana, of when life begins, scientifically doesn't work. It isn't science. It absolutely isn't science. And it also isn't theology. If what we're saying is, what did Jesus say? Not a daggone thing. And he's a Jew. And what do the Jews say? No, life does not begin when sperm meets egg. No, it's a part of the mother. It's a part of the water. Read it. And so the theology is also trumped up, pun intended.
Nice.
What? Where? What? Well, in Psalm 139, it says, it says, you saw my unformed substance, protoplasm, stuff. Mess. The Jews don't think that was and in Jeremiah you said, what? I saw you and I knew you, and the soul entered in. Where? What? Who said that? Go to the Jews. I've been saying get a rabbi. I've been saying call your rabbi and stop talking to your white evangelical didn't go to seminary pastor, because the theology also is trumped up. So the science is not accurate and the theology is not grounded actually. The Hebrew scripture, that's not what it is. And in fact, when you say y'all, Jesus actually said, you've heard it say, thou shalt not kill. And I say, don't go to bed angry. So what's that? And where is this? Where is this murder? When in this fact, the Jewish texts in which this conversation about death and life is happening also say, here's when you kill somebody. Here's when there's an abomination. Here's when you put your Uncle Bob to death for sleeping with your child. And also, you must have an abortion if the woman's life is in danger. So Diana, Caleb, Mark, know the science, know, and no to the theology. It is a made up, well constructed story claiming a moral high ground based actually on bad science and made up theology, and also, frankly, untruth.
Right. And when you say bad theology and bad science, I mean, Jacqui, what you just did is, what I expect. And you and I having a conversation about this. And I start out with talking about all the complexities of my view. The problem is that you can put murder and, don't murder the unborn on a hat.
Right.
And see, this has always been the problem. This was the problem through Trump, MAGA. You 4 letters and you have an entire story.
Right.
Don't murder the unborn. Conception begins at, or life begins at conception. You have an entire story. It doesn't matter if it's made up or not. It fits on a freaking hat. and as soon as it fits on a hat, you have created a popular narrative, and the truth of the matter, the science and the theology of it almost don't even seem to matter. I mean, they matter to us. And what I got into a squall with a cousin of mine on Facebook about this week, and because she said all this stuff about murdering the unborn, and so I came in and I said, well, maybe you need to think about this, and I brought up the Jews, which is exactly what you just did.
Yeah.
And you know what she did, Jacqui? She said, well, those are Jews. They don't know Christ. And she started off with this long
Lord.
I know. So it was like, oh, good. Let's bring in anti-Semitism
Wow.
to the conversation too. So not only does she think she's an abolitionist, protecting innocent life that's being murdered by the likes of you and me, but now she's also defending the true teachings of the church by saying the Jews are part of the old covenant and they didn't know what they were talking about anyway. So it's like I was literally sitting on the other side of Facebook going, well, this isn't going anywhere. I tried. But so I'm always thinking about this. What goes on the hat? What goes on the hat for us? How do we get out there and say these things as crisply and cleanly and appealingly as we possibly can? And I don't know what goes on the hat yet.
I think that's a really well placed question, Diana. And I would like to take a stab on where it goes on the hat.
Okay, good, because you are
I
wearing a hat, honey.
I got a hat on right now. I had to throw a hat on because I could get in this room with you all. I think I would want to just say a couple things first, though. One of the things that I think we as theologians in the public square, we have to remind America that America is not a Christian nation. What we love about America as Christians is that we are a pluralistic nation. We have to remind America that those crazy people who got on the boat and came over here trying to act like it was a land that was uninhabited and they discovered it, they came and discovered, right? But they came hoping to build a nation in which church and state were separated so that there would be a reduction in tyranny. I say to the historian, right? So this wall that we need to put between church and state, or to even just say better, in this state, there is no one religion. In this state, there are many religions. And in this many religioned state, the moral compass that drives people in this place, marry, don't marry, divorce, don't divorce, right? Your child is trans, what kind of care you give, abortion, not abortion. If it's theological, then we have to get in the balcony and maybe the hat says, what would love do? Or maybe the hat says, God speaks many languages. Maybe the hat says, we don't own God. I love God. I love Jesus, but I can't make my Muslim sister feel like, right? And then this week, the people got mean, Diana, about like, let's take the justices and make them look like they were Muslim clerics and talk about Sharia law. Like, then we got to be anti-Islamic in order to,
Yeah.
no, let's fight the real fight. The real fight is you allowed Obama not to even be able to put somebody on the court. We allowed that. We Christians allowed that.
That's right.
We also allowed these guys to take oaths of office and lie. We allowed Kavanaugh. We did that. We did not fight hard enough. So let's own our failing, but our failing can't be focusing on birth control and uteruses. That is Diana's decision. I love that story. I have not had to make that choice. My little eggs never could. They were just too old and they just didn't get pregnant. But right. But
Right.
that's my choice. So I think the hat says God speaks many languages. All religions welcome here. The court is not church.
Jacqui, as always, you completely inspire me. And as soon as you started talking about what goes on the hat, what you put on the hat, and I see your great poster back there with the name of your book, Fierce Love. One of the places where progressives joined hands with lots of other people, but progressive Christians did a lot of leading on this issue was marriage equality. That's and right. Also the rights of gay people. And we had a hat. Love wins.
Love wins.
We had a hat. I still have the hat.
Me too. Diana. Me too.
Yeah, yep. And we also, since Mark has the flag up in the back of his office, we also had a flag. And so that was where progressive Christians could come together with people from lots of other communities and embrace a set of symbols and a phrase. And we could stand with those symbols and in that phrase and interpret it in a whole bunch of different theological or non-theological ways, but we all got it. Love wins. And so we can do this, but for some reason it is rarer. And I think that you put your finger on it, Jacqui, when you talk about how we didn't fight hard enough. And I think it's because there's a lot of people who might disagree with me here, and I understand where some of the disagreement comes from, but a lot of people who are more moderate and more liberal and even progressive in sentiment tend to have a more optimistic view about human nature. So we will tend to think that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that, the courts will work for us, and that, people really aren't that bad. And Mitch McConnell would never, dance on someone's grave and be able to put somebody on the Supreme Court with only 2 weeks left before an election, and so we think, that just couldn't happen because we are optimistic and we trust institutions and we trust people's good natures. Well, maybe that was bad.
or naive. And Diana, I want to complexify what you're saying about progressive people. I thought you were going to say this. So I'm going to say what I thought you were going to say and another piece to join you in this analysis about this. But I also think, to be honest with you, the progressive people and our shadow of prudish is what I thought you were going to say. Right? Like there's a little shadow side, like our primary side and our shadow. And our shadow can be prudish. So it took us a long time to get to Love Wins about gay people.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah,
it took us a long time because it was about sex, damn it.
Right.
Right? And I don't know what the hell happened to us because the Jews, like, you go to Israel, right? You go to a Shabbat dinner in Israel with your friends, and they'd be like, get out. We're about to have sex. The Shabbat has come. It's Friday night. We're about to knock boots. We're about to get busy. We're about to have sex. Why? Because sex is a part of the joy and the love, or the sex, right? We someplace, knocking boots and slamming and reading pornography and having lots of good sex and thinking so. But the shadow part of us, the prudish part of us, like the Puritan prudish part that we haven't fully investigated, interrogated, and therefore rebuked, right? That prudish part of us was like, it's yucky, ew, gay sex, ew. right?
Yeah.
Y'all with me, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not gonna we can't really, it took a long time for us to get with gay because it
Yeah.
had sex, right? It took us a long time to get with women in the pulpit. We're still not, because we menstruate, and that's yucky. So we have a prudish inside, our progressive outside, that I think when it gets to this sex stuff and body stuff and trans stuff and women stuff. This is an anti-women thing. Please, people who are listening, this is not so much about the babies as it is about the women.
That's right.
That's one piece.
Yeah.
And the other piece is our inner racist. And progressive people, especially the people who think they're woke, do not interrogate their racism enough. So when that black man in the White House was trying to whatever, we didn't get alarmed enough, Diana and Caleb and Mark, about the black president not being able to do his agenda. We didn't get alarmed enough about the Voting Rights Act being good. We were kind of like, actually, the things did get better. It's better, right? Do we have to be worried about it? Should have been effing worried about it. But it was a black issue, so we weren't worried about it. So I want to talk about our inner prude and our inner racism that still traps us.
Yeah.
These are wonderful, wonderful points, and it is almost time for us to conclude. And I want to thank you all for being with us, Diana and Jacqui, and for being honorary advisors to progressivechristianity.org. We are so grateful for you all. But before we pivot that much, I do have one question that I want to ask you about what you all have been saying. And that's, we've talked about numbness, and we've talked about how we got here, and we've talked about anger. How is it that we put all of those things to use to move forward, to organize better around this issue as we're moving? And maybe I'll toss that to you, Diana, first, and then to Jacqui.
Jacqui is so much better than I am on the organizing score. I know when I am in the company of a true wise woman and skilled craftsperson when it comes to organizing. For me, it involves, I think that the mutual capacity of reflection and listening. I can't help but remind people that it's when you can't see, when you feel numb, when you're blinded with anger, that contemplation and silence and a level of withdrawing into another place actually become an incredibly important skill set. 2 weeks from now, the text is for the lectionary is going to be the Mary and Martha story in Luke, where Martha is working, and Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet. And Jesus, of course, says that Mary has chosen the better part. And I think there's something really powerful about that text right now. And so I'm always a person who is playing with words and reading poetry and asking people to reconnect with deep levels of beauty in the world and through words and in music and all of those things, because it's those places where we do find, I think, a reservoir of hope, of love, of empowerment, the presence of the Spirit in our lives. So that's the place where I've been sort of going. I've been rereading the wisdom literature this summer, which I feel like I really need. So that's where I'm strong at, and that's what I'm strong at sharing. And then, there will also be the working hard, the specific plans, and the getting loud. And when those things are there, that's certainly what I'm going to be involved in. And I'm already involved in political campaigns and, all kinds of conversations and helping aspire candidates and and things like that to be able to move on, because these elections this fall, the other piece is vote, vote, vote. I do not care if Joe Biden has not yet given you what you wanted for student loans. You know, I know that makes you mad. I know that there are things that have not happened here, but honest to goodness, if we sit home and say, oh, I'm just so irked, that I didn't get the thing that I wanted. There is no Republican over the last 50 years who ever sat at home during any election and said, I'm so irked the Republicans didn't overturn Roe versus Wade this year. They worked for 50 freaking years to make it happen, and a whole bunch of them died along the way and never saw what they wanted, and now they're inflicting exactly what they wanted on your wives, your children, every pregnant person in this country, at your daughters, everything. And so there's a level in which your desire to vote for your own benefit doesn't matter right now.
Yep.
We are voting for Black people. We are voting for women. We are voting for the future. And we are trying desperately to put in as many candidates as we can, is to stop this juggernaut of judges and to stop this insanity. It's already pretty far down the tracks, but we can stop it as it's from going further.
Yeah.
If we get out there and we vote, and then we make the adjustments along the way once we've stopped the freaking train. But the train has got to be stopped. I'm sorry. I guess I'm mad.
I'm really glad. I'm glad to see that. I know you're mad. But one of the things that can happen, I'm so glad to see you, Diana, that I get to, be cast with today. But like the Mary Martha casting, the activist contemplative casting, the white black casting, the loud soft casting. The truth of the matter is we need all the things. That was a great question, Caleb. We need deep introspection, and we need deep prayer, and we need deep study, and we need rest. Follow Diana in the world and follow me in the world and see that I'm saying movements require rest, and I'm about to have some today. But I think also, so to organize, let's just say, Caleb, if I was going to answer you, to organize is to say, I'm going to study the issues. I'm going to read counter points of view so I can know what I think. I'm going to do some theological research. And I'm not kidding when I say we can't ask a Christian response to the Jewish text. We have to find a rabbi to study, or follow the rabbis at Trua, or follow Danya Rutenberg, follow some progressive Jewish women and see what's being said there. Remember that there's a thing called the Constitution, and read it, and read the Bill of Rights. And yes, get politically active locally, in the state elections and the national elections. Diana's right. If we don't vote for freedom, vote a vision for a just society, the nation is going to hell. We are going to protect A-15 rifles as though they are human. We're going to protect corporations as though they're human. And we're going to be distracted by this conversation about embryos and babies. I'm not trying to make that lightly. I'm saying it's working, isn't it? This is what's working. So let's get smart, people of faith. Let's know that God speaks more than one language. God speaks Abrahamic languages that are not just Christian, and God speaks to all people because God is amazing and they can do amazing things without us. Let's stop being prejudiced against people that are not Christian. Let's own our inner prude and our inner racism. Let's do all the work, and let's keep all these things intersectional. That's how I organize. If it affects you, it affects me. And I think follow middlechurch.org for some resources for you to read, to do, to come, to study, to act.
Thank you so much, Jacqui and Diana, for taking the time to be with us today. And you all are theological giants, and we appreciate you all taking time to have this conversation with each other and with everyone who's out there watching. So we know that this is a huge issue, and that there are many aspects of this. This is part 2 of a series. We're going to have a part 3 next Thursday at the same time, and we're going to look at some of the texts that are often used around this issue. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those mean. And so Mark and I and one of our board members, Sharon Jacob, are going to be here for that. So we invite you to come and be a part of part 3 of this next week at noon Eastern time on Thursday. I want to say just another round of thanks to all of you for joining us today. Virtual applause as well. So until next time, thank you for joining us on Things That Matter.
Thank you for having us.